Okay. It's not really all that hot or cold out there anymore. Shut that off. Okay. So today's the 20th of March. It's Saturday. It's almost in the afternoon. It's 11:42 a.m. We're going to talk about time enough for woo and time. Time is an interesting concept, all right? Most people get it wrong. All of the science fiction writers, in the vast majority, have gotten it wrong. Almost all of the science writers have gotten it wrong. The reason we don't have time travel is because we don't understand it. If we understood it, we wouldn't even try for time travel. It would not even really be anything to think about in a realistic fashion. It would simply be relegated to fantasy, fantasy short fiction, really, that sort of thing. The issue about time is intimately connected with space. That's why we call it the time-space continuum. The quantum mechanics guys and general relativity academia guys call it time-space continuum for one reason that is false. And I call it that for another reason that is accurate from a perspective of the ether. In one of my older videos, I talked about this idea of a little bloop theory. That's the little bloop theory of universe, because we did not have a big bang in which all of energy was set loose all at once and universe is expanding ever after. It doesn't work that way. There's this, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but there's this pulse that goes through it 22 trillion times a second, and it's followed by a void that is also going through it 22 trillion times a second. And this is what allows us to have motion in our reality, because it creates and then destroys reality. 22 trillion times a second reality is created, 22 trillion times a second it's destroyed. So there's a 44 trillionth of a second oscillation within universe. It's necessarily this way. That's an order of magnitude in a multiple of Avogadro's number by pi, and rounded to get 22 trillion. That pulse, when it crosses its true energy, when it crosses itself, it creates complexity. And it keeps bouncing around, and complexity increases, and you get matter condensing out of the energy of the materium that makes universe, where universe is. That's where matter is. So E does not equal mc squared. You can't extract energy from matter. It doesn't work that way. And matter is energy itself condensed. So the nature of the reality that we have is that as the pulse crosses itself, it creates complexity. As complexity reaches a certain stage, it condenses into matter. The first matter it condenses into is the hydrogen ion, and when the hydrogen ion comes into existence, it brings along with it what we think of as space and time. And that space and time are cohesive to it within its existence within the materium. No atoms ever really actually touch each other in the materium. That's an illusion. It's an illusion provided by sensation. There's non-penetrability of matter. You can't shove one matter into another. No two matters can occupy the same space at the same time. And in fact, no matter can ever occupy the same space again. That's another concept to go into. So matter comes into existence, whether it's a hydrogen ion, and then everything else is based off of that, right? It's all complexity based off the hydrogen ion, multiplications of the hydrogen ion. And you get all the other atoms, all the other constructs we call atoms. As the complexity increases, Each and every unit brings in space and time. Space merges with other space, and time complements other time, but it does not merge. We can get into those some other time. Anyway, though, we have time enough for woo here. And we have to understand that humans think of time, we have different concepts about time, and we express these all under the umbrella of time. But it's really two different things here entirely, two very basically different things. And so we have the umbrella that we call time. And in that umbrella, on one half of it, we have quantity. And on the other half, we have perception. Okay? And the two are independent of each other, but they're linked. So you have a perception of the passing of time. You have many, many, many perceptions about time, and we'll get into that in a second. But the quantity basically is the tick, 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 tick of the clock, or down into the zzz of the atomic clock, going off at the rate of the vibration of the cesium atom, that sort of thing. And we try and live our lives by this, and we speak as though it's all determined. But our determination for our experience and our perception of time is far more important than the quantification of that time. And we know this because of many different examples. You're driving along and you get into an accident, and time stands still for a second as you take in tons of information and just a huge amount of literally an implosion on you as a result of that car wreck, an implosion on you of all these impressions and all that kind of stuff rushing into your brain, and then boom, it appears to rush real fast, and all of a sudden you're in the hospital and you don't know what's going on, right? And all of that time that had happened in between the actual accident and you arriving there is like maybe one or two little memories. And the perception was entirely different in that space of the time as opposed to the milliseconds of the accident itself, which seemed to take forever. And you have that, they illustrate that in the in movies with the slow motion stuff, right? And you see the bits of metal flying through the air really slow, and CGI and that sort of stuff. It's really cool. And it actually, a lot of these visual impressions that are used in movies to convey and move the plot along without using language, without resulting or coming down into a resolution of linguistics, but rather progressing the plot through visual elements or sound, come down to the same kind of impressions about time that we have. So they'll give you, a lazy afternoon might be the pitter-patter of rain, right? The dark night of the film is the storm beating down on the house, and still rain, but just a lot more of it in a shorter period of time, and it has that oppressive feeling as opposed to the other one, which could have been very pleasant, singing in the rain kind of thing, right? So we have dozens and dozens and dozens of ways of perceiving and living in time. And for us, time is an emotional state frequently that has duration or persistence. And we see this culturally. We see this encapsulated culturally, where certain periods will bring out artists that will capture a feeling of time, and they'd be able to put it into their art such that the rest of us can experience, and we can all say, yeah, I actually remember being there and living through those kind of days. Like Tennessee Williams, the playwright, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. All of those, that whole slew of plays, his as well as other emulators, and also just others in that same period, that were trying to reflect the quality of time of living in the South in the 50s. The transition from the final death of the remnants of the war of the state between the states, and the final death of the slavery aspects of it, and the crumbling of all of that infrastructure, as well as that quality of the sort of stickiness, the hot, mugginess that you get on a southern night that seems to make the night itself go a lot longer, as opposed to the cold nights in the cabin that where you want to hop right up and get that fire moving in the morning. There's nothing there to make you linger, right? So there's a different motivation, a different perception of time. So we have these perceptions of time, and then we also have to ask ourselves, do we at times, do we periodically, for whatever impetus, impress on our impression of time, on our perception of time, our own emotions? In other words, do we project what we're feeling anyway onto the times? So if you were depressed, are you projecting onto that time that you were depressed a darkness and so on that is not really characterized and felt by other people around you? It was not a generalized mood. And so are you perceiving time in the same level as the other people in the social order? And yes, you'll always experience it at the quantum, or at the quant level of quantification and ticking it off, how many hours, how many seconds. But do you have the same emotional intake as a human? Do you feel time the way others are feeling that time? And sometimes that you feel time differently, from one day to the next, from one year to the next, from one segment of your life to the next. There's a quality. And so we have quality perception of time that maybe it's built into the nature of time itself in our relationship in our mind. Maybe it's a side effect of things like these strange energies from space that are hitting us now and activating our vagus nervous system, right? And we would not be able to tell. We wouldn't be able to tell if it was actually made into the time that is within each of the little elements that we call atoms that go into building up our cells, like all the spaces there, in the impenetrability aspect of things. Or is this being triggered in us and pushed on us by universe in order that we might feel that, in order that we might in some way react to it? Now, I know that some aspects of our lives are like that. So I know that the universe provides energies and feelings and conditions and circumstance such that we will be placed in those challenges that are due to us in this body's life. And so in each of us, in our body's life, we will expect to face certain challenges. And those challenges are placed there by the nature of our bodies interacting with universe through what we term the soul as the initial linker of our personal karma to this body in the materium. And so there are aspects of karma that universe will put in front of us. And the universe will basically say, okay, here's a challenge for you, and in this body's life. Now, we need not react in any particular way. It's up to us. We can defer dealing with that. We can put it aside. We can wall it off. We can go on. We can seek other aspects of life and not deal with any of these challenges. Sooner or later, you must, because universe will just keep, if it's your karmic due, universe will just keep bringing it back life after life after life, and ultimately you will be faced to reconcile it, or forced to reconcile it, or deal with it as you go along. You cannot, one could not easily deny that aspect of universe over a number of lifetimes. It would become extremely difficult because it compounds, right? You build karma by denying karmic challenges, by avoiding them. Actually, and it for many of us, it develops into this understanding, oh, okay, I get it now. Pain deferred is pain increased. So I eat my pain now, I'll take it now. Whatever the bad news is, give it to me now, I'll deal with it. because, to delay and hold it off, it just increases it and aggravates the whole situation. Anyway, so here we are as humans experiencing a quality of time that's really rather remarkable. It's remarkable in the specifics, it's remarkable in the generalities, and in some ways it's also remarkable at an internal and individual level. So we're all feeling things that are weird and different and unexpected and so on, right? And everything is wonky. I'm speaking primarily from a perspective of the United States, but however, it must be acknowledged that the United States, being in this bizarre wonkiness, is affecting the rest of the planet, the rest of the humanity, to some degree. The more connected you are to, daily news and the exportation of American social media culture, the more you are interconnected to the wonkiness that's going on with us at the moment. Now, my software, when I devised it all, was based on kind of like trying to twist out, in a weird way, twist out the perceptions of time and then quantify them in a numeric system so I could add like building emotional tension and release tension, and then do projections on how this tension was going to manifest around what words over what periods of time, what durations. And so I got really good at associating temporal perception with linguistic change in the near real time as it was going on. Because of the nature of censorship and all of that, I can't run my full-blown system anymore. The most I can do is to run the immediacy system, immediacy data, which only looks out about 6 weeks at a maximum with any kind of reliability. Yeah, it really goes out 12 weeks because of the error rates, but I think that the sweet spot in most of the immediacy data is within that first 30 days as being the most accurate. And so I've recently run it, and the point of the time enough for woo is that we can talk about the woo aspects of time here, and thus our feeling of it, and how we're all perceiving it weird, and that this year, 2021, is not at all like last year, and last year was not at all like the year before, and we are in clearly a different set of odd feeling time. And it appears to have the same numbers, January 1, 2, 3, and so on, but it just feels different. And we're all reacting to that. And so there's all kinds of questions that are coming up, and people just don't know what's going on. And we see that there's indeed evidence. Okay, so now let's talk about, all right, so in examining evidence, you do critical thinking. Doesn't mean you don't get all whipped up. So I'm looking, the other day I was looking at these, this gigapan from the Perseverance rover from Mars that I got off of Art Alien TV's YouTube channel. And there's weird shit in there. I think I found a helmet or a skull. There's these lights up on the hill. I don't know what the hell those are, and all different other kinds of stuff. But I actually think at one point I found this insect, because there was this little bug thing that was up at a particular angle that appeared to be flying like this. It had a black head, it had a red body, and a black tail. And it appeared, and it was just at this weird angle relative to the rest of the landscape. And it was a little tiny thing. And I thought, geez, that's a bug. And I found more of them. And it's like, wow. You had to go in way deep. You had to go into maximum magnification to see these things. But there were a number of them. And so this is all about critical thinking, by the way. All right. So this was what I ended up calling a woobie. And it still is, but it has a different meaning. I thought it was a Martian woobie, okay? I thought it was a Martian insect. And I'm looking at these things and I'm thinking, well, wait a second. So critical thinking doesn't mean you don't jump to conclusions, doesn't mean you don't enjoy the thrill of the hunt, so to speak, intellectually. It doesn't mean You reject all of your own wild thoughts here, but it does mean that you continually analyze as you go along anytime you find something that could that doesn't make sense, right? Any time that there's a perception that something just was odd at that level, right? And now we're all feeling everything odd at the moment, and I was really excited about finding these Martian woobies in this picture of Mars, because it's like, wow, life on Mars, insects, and the whole thing. But it turns out they were artifacts of the Gigapan stitching software. And so Gigapans are made by splicing together lots and lots and lots of images that are taken in strips. So they've got all these strips of film, and they put them all together to give you a better aspect ratio, so you have a better picture. And you know, and it's not square all the time necessarily. It can rise up. It depends on where the rover is at that point, and you know, that sort of thing. And I was seeing all these woobies, and I found the first one. It was like right there in this big picture. This big picture might be, you know, miles of landscape. And I see the woobie there, and I think, aha, this is really cool. Now, bear in mind, I'm zoomed way in just to be able to see this insect kind of thing. I was looking at dirt in the near ground, seeing if there was anything that anybody had dropped there, you know, just looking to see. And I see this insect thing, and insect-like thing, and I see it there, and I was like, wow. And then later on, I found another one up over here. And then later on, I found another one down here. And I thought, damn, this is really cool. I got all excited, tweeting them out, capturing screen captures and stuff. Damn, Martian insects, Martian insects. But when I found the third one then, I started thinking, okay, this is odd. It was odd because these things all had this exact same angle of attack relative to the perpendicular. And even if Martian insects fly in absolute formation that is rigid, you would expect to see some variance in terms of the angle of the insect. And so I started thinking, well, this is really strange. And so I went in and started, at that point, I started dropping into critical thinking, because it struck me as really odd that there was no variance in the insect, because life is variance and change. Now, it was variance to the broken landscape at this particular sharp angle that clued me into the woobies to begin with. And so now I was cluing into the fact that the individual woobies didn't have variance one from another. They all looked sort of alike, even though they were not necessarily within the photograph. They didn't appear to be at the same level of focus, right? That's what also made them look very lifelike. Some of them were a little bit further back, so to speak. And then I determined by doing a sweep, going back and forth, this one was actually like right up here, by sweeping all along here and then coming up here and sweeping all along here, I started finding them repetitiously across the Gigapan. And it's like, well, there's either a shitload of these woobies in there, or this is an artifact placed in by the software that stitched together all of the images, which is now what I think it is. I don't think the woobie actually exists as a Martian insect. We haven't found it yet, but this is a woobie, which is a, I thought it was a Martian insect, but hey, it turns out to be an artifact of the software that stitched together the Gigapan conclusion in critical thinking. Okay, so now a woobie is a conclusion in critical thinking, where you stop and you analyze yourself as you're going along and say, oh, hey, something weird is here. And you know, I'm making a mistake in terms of my impression of these. Now, a lot of woo-woo guys don't do that. They say, oh my God, it's a UFO, and then they stick with that forever without examining actually what's going on. I want to know, so I don't trap myself in a belief system. So I didn't believe in the woobies. I was just fascinated by it. But now I know that woobies are in fact a legitimate thing to watch out for. The reason that I saw the woobie, by the way, was that I was zeroed in on a little tiny level of it, and my field of vision would not allow me to see the next one over here, so I would have to shift at that level. This one would drop off and I would see that one, so I saw no direct correlation in terms of how they were all lined up or situated relative to each other. So you couldn't step back and get a big enough observational overview to see that they were in fact linked up to the splits in the gigapan. In order to see them at all, you had to drill in. There's tons of other stuff in that gigapan. It's still worth going into, and it's really cool, but there's no Martian insects there. Slight diversion. Okay, so we've sort of had a situation here where our like Western civilization, all right. So Western civilization has sort of had a near-death experience, and we've sort of been taken over by the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. It's really more than that. It's globalist. It's all these banksters. They believe in communism for the rich, where they take everything from the poor and share it among themselves, or fight about it among themselves. Communism has never worked. I saw just the other day, I've seen 2 of these progressive channels where people are trying to say, oh, no, we'll do it right, you know. Never mind how the Russians did it or how the Chinese have done it. We'll do communism correctly. Yeah, right, dude, right. Anyway, so we're just at this weird period of time. And people are having strange perceptions within the period of time, myself included, like the woobies. But my critical thinking analysis, I have these little clues that says, wait a second. And then I go and have a look, and yep, sure enough, you were an ass, you know. Or your perception was, you know, in other words, you wanted to believe that you saw a wooby, and therefore you saw the wooby. And the wooby was there, but it just wasn't what you thought it was. It wasn't an insect, it's an artifact of the software. You always have to watch out for that. All of these digital cameras and stuff, they're not like the old simple cameras that just took light, twisted it around through a lens, and put it out on an emulsified piece of plastic to react to, right? All these digital cameras have software that intrudes all over. So all of the woo has to be exceptionally well analyzed in order to be valid woo. All right, so now we've got a situation here for, so I've run the software, I've run the immediacy data. The immediacy data is reliable to a certain extent. It doesn't have a lot of detail that we can go into because I'm just not willing to do that level of work. Tons of work, I'm not willing to, just not willing to do it anymore. But I'm kind of curious, and I need to know for my own planning purposes just how things are going to go along. Because I'm doing some other projects and you know, have some new interests that will take me out and about, so I need to know how the you know, how all the natives are going to be feeling that day. Not at that level, but in a general sense, I want to know what I'm going to be dealing with over the course of time here. Anyway, so we've got the immediacy data run. We're currently in a period of time that extended in from February, and it went to the 25th, which is the last time I ran the immediacy data. And this was this emotional tension bulge. It extended in through the 25th. That's as far as I could tell at the time. This is back from February. And here we have all of this stuff about silver, to a certain extent gold, and the dollar. And now we're seeing the bonds and basically all this economic stuff that's popping up. And then there's a little bit of scattering of other flare-ups of major interest points. As the current immediacy data run projects, we're going to be looking at a continuation of this. And on the 28th, we're going to get a kick up on it. And that kick up would be pretty substantial and a nice rise. And that's going to continue out through, through April 14th, at that level. So that's through the 14th. This does not relate to taxes. That's what I thought at first. And now we find out they've deferred the taxes out into May, so that's even more certain that this isn't about taxes. a lot of this is about silver, and we get into a weird or a situation. Let's just say it's economic. And the language that came back around that was at rest, impassive, amidst trouble, conflict, a three-way fight, a bunch of contention over the formation of some kind of a union. That may be like in this sense, it doesn't mean a union with dues and cards and all of that. It might just mean a new power block is forming up. So sometime around the 14th or so is when we get into this, the formation of this power block or union or resistance, whatever we want to call it. And that's where the emotional building tension starts taking off again. And then this one right here, I might as well I could run it up at a diagonal. I have no way of knowing how it's going to progress out into much beyond into May, but I suspect because of the levels that we're at, that it's going to be something up like that. Okay? And that within this whole thing here, this is our desperation line. All right, so that's the desperation that's going to be building, as forecast all long ago, that will be resolved to some extent by the release of space alien tech, UFO information this summer. And the release was actually forecast for August, actually let's just say July to September, in that time frame. Some point in there was when we were going to get this process that would result in what we can think of as a release, secrets revealed, release of UFO information with an intent of relieving desperation that basically begins and continues as an economic driver on this, all right? The desperation gets up. We've got a language in there about, we've got all different kinds of language that about this like near-death experience of civilization that we're going through. It may be an actual death experience, we just don't know. It's not yet resolved. But the Biden pretendency is going to be figuring into a lot of this stuff up in here. It's going to really ramp up here as well. April through June. So it's, because there were a lot of prescient words in there, I know have a lot of carrying value. And so let's just put in the pretendency here as purple. And so it's going to contribute its little share of impetus into this desperation thing. Pretendency. And it heads off that way. Words around there go towards confusion at a global damn level, right? Not only the confusion in Dementia Joe's mind, not only the confusion in the body politic of the United States, but also globally, as in what the fuck is going on, guys? And absolute outright incredulity on the part of people on the planet really starts pulling in as we get into April. So, 10, 15 days from now, in the suggestion in the data, I'll say it that way, a suggestion, okay? A preponderance of words here suggests that that as we get into June, we might be actually looking at the dissolution of the pretendency, that it doesn't have the carry value to carry it past the month of June. That I don't know if this means people drift away from it, and like actual people working for it, if they just like sort of don't show up for work, or what the deal is. Now that would sort of fit, because if the money supply continues at this particular rate, we get into desperation here. It may well be that by June, they can't pay federal employees anymore, and that all the states are scrambling to create their own currencies or come up with something. serious. That'll get to that level. So it'll all be upended in the overwoo. So anything you think now, any rigid structure that has existed for the last 200 or 300 years, just blow it away. It's all going to be upended in the overwoo. If it's worth having, we'll carry it forward. If not, it'll be just left, flotsam, jetsam on the water, or debris on a debris field on the beach, and we just won't care about it. We just have to go on. And so it may be by June we don't have the dollars, or the dollars are worth so little that no one shows up anymore. It just dissolves. And that's really what we have there. It also has a dissolving emotional tension. So its release of emotional tension starts creeping in, and by the time that we get into June, the impact, which it isn't much, of the Biden pretendency just dissolves. It has even less impact on the rest of us. In that sense, we're really in the destruction of the past at that point. Will there be a federal government? Will we continue to organize ourselves the same way? What's going to happen, basically? And then we get into a situation which, as I have maintained, some colonel, some lieutenant colonel, some full bird colonel, sitting in an office somewhere in this time frame will make a decision that will result in a process that will yield secrets revealed and disclosure of UFO tech and all of this kind of stuff. Will it save Civilization 1.0 and convert us into sci-fi world? We basically have to wait till we get there to find out. If the tech is, good enough, exposed enough, not hidden, and so on, yeah, I mean, humans are smart. We can really kick ass with shit. And I do think that there is that potential. But it's going to be a rough few years as we go through this, and we can't kid ourselves about that. We're going to be very smart, and not everybody's going to make it. Not everybody will be very smart. And circumstances, challenges, universe puts the karma in front of you to present those challenges that you can decide, or you can deal with or not as you choose. So we're in the period of transformation, as I've stated in the overwoo and then woofubics, and even now, this transformational process begun years ago is culminating in a visible fashion for the generations now alive. And we are the fortunate ones that will go through it and decide what will be the nature of humanity when we come out. And everything is upended. Everything is open for discussion. This means to a great extent that a lot of people are just going to basically freak out because their minds are held by religious or rigid ideologies, such as leftist progressivism or wokeism, which doesn't work and is not an adequate method of surviving, only exists in their framework supported by the structure that allowed it to grow. Very much like communism, right? Communism only exists as an alternative to capitalism. Its claim is that it intends to solve the problems of capitalism and make everything good. Now, if you take capitalism out of the picture, the tenets of communism do not on their own stand up and hold up. And so it always collapses, always will. It's not worth the diversion, and we're not going to go through it now. It's, we've been there, done that, and we're going to drop it. We are going to re-engineer all of capitalism in getting through sci-fi world as we go through this period of desperation that will arise greatly from the economics. But it's not going to be the way that the powers that be might have intended it, where they were the only ones that had any of the silver and any of the gold and so on, or any of the crypto. That's been busted out of them. So they're fighting now. The powers that be are now fighting to try and maintain their agenda and maintain their illusion that they've cultivated so long in history of them on top, etc. And that's all falling away now. It's all sliding away. And their resets aren't going to happen the way that they think as we go forward. And we're in this really interesting, critical time. Now, there's nothing for us guys to do, right? All of us farmers, we've kicked the sheep out of the way. we've got our little camp stove out there. We're heating up our chaga tea, and maybe a little pizza is cooking on a hot rock or something, right? And we're just watching the smoke come up out of the empire as the powers that be lose it, and all the other people that are losing it attack the powers that be trying to get it, right? And but us farmer guys, we're just kicking back. Let it settle out. Nothing to involve us at this stage. We're builders, These other fuckers are the destroyers of the past, like Antifa and so forth. Once they destroy get their urge, the rage out and that kind of stuff, they're done. So, it's only for extremely narrow range of time that people can be in Antifa. You're not going to have 60-year-old Antifa guys out there rioting. You may have it now with twisted boomers and stuff, but I'm saying that people that started as Antifa in their 20s are not going to be in Antifa in their 60s and hold this same mindset. It just isn't going to happen that way. But that's also the whole situation with all of civilization at this moment, is that it's all been overwooed, and we're in that period of time. So now there's opportunities for people that are setting back, that are not participating in the destruction of the past, that are just waiting for the smoke to clear and going to go pick up the debris and see if there's any useful bits. And we're at that stage as well. So that you can indeed, in this period of time, pick up on opportunities. As the Biden pretendency runs into its main, their main export is confusion, right? And you could say that on one level, because he trolled them, you could say Trump's main export was irritation at a personal level, right? He liked irritating the leftists. And you got to give him that, It was a particular habit or vice of his, and he was good at it, and so on, right? Biden's is confusion. That's all he's got is confusion. And their whole thing is confused. No one knows what the fuck's going on. And this is also extended out to a global level. And that's going to get worse, and it's going to really pick up as we get into April. Like April 2nd and 3rd. The 3rd is the first date that shows up with any significance based on the timing clues I've got. And so the 3rd of April on through all of June. But in June, as we hit into the 1st of June here in projections, the prescient language that's running out of April and in May suggests that there's a dissolution, a dissolving of interest, of energy, of everything about the Biden pretendency as we shade into June. So it may well be that, as I say, we're running into such severe economic issues in that period of time, and that would be fitting and timely relative to past history of economic crises and how rapidly they will develop. And so we might get into the point where we have the giant economic crises continue, and it causes all of the desperation from, Biden not doing shit, not knowing what he's doing. We're going to have an invasion, probably of the U.S., and it's going to result in violence on a scale that will be shocking to people that don't live here, right? I mean, if you live in the United States, we've got violence here. We're a violent group. We like to fight. We're well armed, and you don't just do that shit without consequences. That'll be in this period of time here. How big of an invasion, whatever, I don't know, right? There's just no details in this. But the economic aspect of this, you can see it continuing on as that it would get worse here in June, such that the dollar is basically worthless. Then we could indeed have an absolute dissolution of the federal government in the sense of all of the civil servants just refusing to go to work because there's no fucking point. You're a civil servant, maybe you're making $120,000 a year, and you're in charge of some kind of HUD thing or road thing or riparian stream thing or something like that in Washington D.C. And that $120,000 a year now, if you could find one, maybe it might buy you a Litecoin, and $120,000 a year, all of your $120,000 for that whole year, if you could have it all in your hand at once, without, you know, at $120,000 without having to pay taxes on it, maybe it would buy you 2 tires and 5 tanks of gas. So, you know, it might be that the hyperinflation is that bad. And at that stage, people won't go to work. They'll just simply not show up because there's no economic incentive for them to do so. In fact, they're out scrambling for food to eat and, you know, these kind of things, real things of real value to pay their bills and at least be able to, you know, maintain electricity, get water, and get food. And so it'll be like socialism in Venezuela, socialism in any other place on the planet when it erupts, or communism. You know, it's just going to get really bad, and then things will go to hell, and then we'll throw all that out and start all over again with a much more refined capitalism and a sound money. If we have sound money, everything works fine. With sound money, by the way, you only need a single person out of a household of 4 to work in order to support the whole household and do very well. You know, so women won't be forced to work if we have a system of sound money. We'll be able to get back to the family dynamics that, you know, made America great in the 50s and 60s that were degraded in the degradation of the money by Nixon from 72 onward. If Nixon had been tough and had just taken the hit and said no more gold, we're going to a real gold standard, and none of this petrodollar shit, if he hadn't listened to Kissinger to develop the petrodollar and had just ended it then, we would be in a different situation now. Now we're going to have to take all of that extra pain that had been deferred since Nixon's time, and we're going to have to eat it now and go through this whole process, come up with some sound money, and probably backed and based on silver as the bimetallic, with silver at the top, and gold as the circulating. Because we've got tons of gold. We've got vast quantities of gold in the United States, in dozens of different places. So we can mine that, and we can have circulating gold money, no problem. And then have cryptocurrencies for electronic transfers of real value in their representation as objects of the ability to transfer value across distance relative to gold, right? And so we're coming into this period of time here. The data sets that I'm running now in terms of the immediacy values are confirmatory of what had been suggested in the long-term data way the hell back, and we're just there now. And so right at the moment, it looks like we're going to have this other bump up on the 28th, that economic conditions will not dissipate. They're going to continue occupying us from this point forward. Number of years, my data set here, as I say, goes out about 6 to 8 weeks with any accuracy, and I just don't mess with it after that. And here we go, guys. So we have time enough to do everything. Now it's time to get what little preparation time you have left to maximize it out. And then kick back as a farmer, you know, sit back with the hot rock to your side and a little fire underneath it, cooking your pizza and drinking your chaga tea and watching the dollar empire burn down around you. And then as we build back a new functioning meritocracy, which is also the same as capitalism, based on silver and gold. And yeah, probably we'll go in there and find rare earths in the Grand Canyon in vast quantities that will make China, you know, just drool because we'll find so many rare earths in there, along with all the gold. But that's, you know, that's somewhere out further on the other side of September, further on the other side of the release of the UFO files and all of this kind of stuff. It's a very interesting year, this year, woo, and having all of the woo intrude on everybody and upend everybody. Now, remember about the time discussions, that a lot of this stuff, or many of the feelings you're having during this period of time can be attributed to these strange energies that we're getting coming in around the sun, these cosmic rays and other things that are screwing with the Schumann resonance and all of that. As you react to those, your attitudes and reactions can and are being pressed out in your perception of the times. So I'm continually baffled by all the craziness that's going on around me, but I don't participate in any of it, so I don't have an emotional reaction to it. You know, it's like I'm not sharing the emotional reaction of the people with the, that were part of the Q movement, right, and the failure of that. I'm not sharing the emotional reaction of the Democratic faithful with the what the fuck when we supposedly won, but it sure doesn't feel like we won. It sure feels really wonky, and no one gives us any respect. And we got this really, you know, dementia Joe, and who the fuck knows what's going on up there? Did we really win or what? So I'm just not feeling with it, any of that. And you can do that too. You can step outside of this. You can sit back. You can say, you know, it's all going to resolve itself. This too shall pass. It doesn't have to involve me. I can just tend to my own stuff here, necessary to overcoming the obstacles that all these other fuckers running around involved in all of this stuff are throwing in the way of all of us as these karmic challenges. And so just take the little karmic challenges as they come and go along, and there we go. And hopefully as we go through here, the Alta report stuff will be proved correct, and we'll have a Secrets Revealed episode, as I say, probably initiated by some colonel, because I really actually do think the military is in charge, and that something really wonky is going on with the Biden pretendency. So probably some colonel will say, okay, enough of this shit, and you know, take a file somewhere and hand it to some reporter and say, you know, here, go print this. Welcome to your woo, guys. It's only going to get more wooey from here. If you don't have you know, you have your attitude. That's the only thing you've got, right? So if I didn't have my humor, I'd be a really sorry bastard. Live long and prosper.